Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We've got a ton of your articles here all about fintech ecosystems. Seems like you're really trying to figure out what's driving this financial revolution, huh?
It really is a revolution, and it's impacting all of us, even if we don't realize it. We're not just talking about mobile payments. This is about startups going toe-to-toe with Wall Street and tech, changing how we even interact with money.
I'm ready to dive in. We've got articles on AI, neobanks, the whole shebang. But maybe first, when we say fintech ecosystem, what are we even talking about? Can you paint a picture for us?
Imagine a marketplace, but instead of selling, fruits and veggies, it's all about financial technology. So you've got your up-and-comers, these fintech startups with their fancy apps, and they're right there next to these big traditional banks and their big buildings. Oh, and don't forget the tech giants. They're starting to get involved too. And of course, all the investors hoping to cash in. It's this really dynamic mix, and everyone's connected.
So it's like a financial jungle out there, survival of the fittest.
More like a rainforest, actually. Think about it.
Yeah.
You've got your massive trees, those big established institutions, but even they need the undergrowth. They need those smaller players. That's what makes it an ecosystem. Everything's connected.
Okay, I like that. And these articles keep mentioning how fintech is totally changing how we interact with money. For someone like me who, full disclosure, still forgets their mobile banking password sometimes, how is this impacting me?
One word. Convenience. Remember your days of actually going to the bank, waiting in line just to deposit a check? Fintech is making that a thing of the past.
I mean, I'm not saying I miss the awkward small talk with the teller or anything.
Right. Take neobanks, for example. These are totally online banks, which means you can open an account, get a loan, even trade stocks from your couch, all with a few taps on your phone.
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah.
But these neobanks, are they actually giving traditional banks a run for their money?
They're definitely shaking things up. They attract customers by offering lower fees, really easy-to-use apps, and just focusing on customer experience. It's like the difference between a crowded department store and online shopping. Sometimes you just want that easy digital experience.
And I bet those big banks are feeling the pressure. How are they keeping up in this new world?
They're adapting. Some are teaming up with these fintech startups, combining the startup's agility with what the bank already has.
So it's less about competition and more about finding ways to work together and innovate.
Exactly. It's about creating a financial system that's more dynamic and responsive, which benefits everyone.
So we've got this whole ecosystem. New players are coming in. Old players are adapting. It's a lot. Where do we even start to unpack this? What are the key things that make a successful fintech ecosystem?
Well, your articles highlight a few things. First off, talent. We need skilled developers who can bring these ideas to life. And of course, we need those entrepreneurs, the ones with the vision. And let's not forget the investors that keep the lights on.
It's like a three-legged stool. You need all three.
Exactly. And speaking of keeping the lights on, we can't forget about capital. Fintech startups need funding, whether it's from those early angel investors or from bigger firms placing larger bets.
What about crowdfunding? I've seen some interesting fintech startups on those platforms.
Crowdfunding is huge. It lets everyday people become investors, which is amazing. It's like saying, hey, I believe in this, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
That's awesome. But with all this innovation, there must be challenges too, right? Like, what about regulations? How do we make sure that this doesn't turn into the Wild West out there? You're right, it can't just be a free-for-all, right? We need some rules of the road. That's where regulations come in.
100%. It's a tough balance, though. Too many rules and you stifle innovation, things slow down, too few, and it's like you said, the Wild West. Nobody wants that.
So how do you find that sweet spot? Are there any countries that are doing it well?
Your articles mentioned the UK and Singapore. They seem to be ahead of the curve. They've both been using this thing called a regulatory sandbox.
Regulatory sandbox. Okay, that sounds kind of fun, but I'm guessing it's more complicated than it sounds.
It's a really cool idea, actually. It lets fintech startups test their products and services, but in a safe environment, with regulators watching, of course.
So like a real-world beta test, but for finance.
Yeah.
They can work out the kinks before going big.
Exactly. And it's a win-win. Startups get feedback, regulators get to see how these new technologies work in practice. Everyone benefits.
That makes a lot more sense than just dropping the regulatory hammer on everyone.
Right. And that's what makes the difference in these fintech ecosystems. It's not just the tech. It's about creating the right environment for things to grow the right way.
So we've got the players, we've got the need for collaboration, and the rules. Now let's talk tech. We've mentioned AI, but what's that actually look like in the real world? Are we talking robot financial advisors yet?
Not quite robots yet. But AI is already changing things in a big way. Think about it. AI is great at analyzing huge amounts of data, spotting patterns, making predictions, all things that are super important in finance.
I can see that. But what does it actually look like? Like, how is AI making my life easier as a consumer?
Imagine you get one of those sketchy emails, promises of easy money, that kind of thing.
Or I think we've all been there.
AI is being used by banks and financial institutions to fight that kind of fraud in real time. It can track transactions, flag anything suspicious, potentially save you from a scam.
So AI is like my bank account's bodyguard? I like it. What else can it do?
Remember those recommendations you get, like on Spotify or Amazon?
You mean how they seem to know what I want before I do? Yeah, it's a little creepy, but also kind of cool.
That's AI at work. And it's coming to finance, too. Imagine getting investment recommendations that are tailored for you, or a budgeting tool that helps you manage your money better.
Okay, now that's something I could actually use. AI can help me make smarter financial decisions. Sign me up. What other cool tech should we be paying attention to? What about blockchain? It's everywhere, but I'm still not sure I totally get it.
Yeah, blockchain is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot. Basically, it's a digital record-keeping system, but it's super secure because it's decentralized. Instead of one bank or institution keeping track of everything, it's spread out across a network of computers.
Okay, so instead of one central authority, it's like a whole bunch of computers all working together.
Exactly. And because the information is constantly being updated and verified by the whole network, it's really, really hard to mess with. That's what makes it so good for financial transactions. More secure, more transparent.
That makes sense. But how does that actually work in the real world? What are the practical uses of blockchain in fintech?
One big one is cross-border payments. Think about sending money overseas. Usually, it takes forever, costs a ton in fees, and involves a bunch of middlemen. Blockchain has the potential to make the whole process faster, cheaper, and more efficient.
Wow, that would be huge for businesses and people who need to send money internationally. No more waiting for days for a wire transfer to go through. What else is blockchain being used for in fintech?
People are exploring it for things like supply chain finance, to track goods and payments more securely, even things like digital identity verification to prevent fraud.
Blockchain really could change everything. What about those other tech terms we hear all the time, like cloud computing and big data? How do they fit into all of this?
Good question. They might not be as exciting as AI or blockchain, but they're super important. Cloud computing is what lets a lot of these fintech companies exist in the first place. It's like the engine you don't see, but it keeps everything running.
So instead of needing their own servers and IT departments, fintech companies can basically rent what they need from cloud providers.
Exactly. Way more cost-effective, and it lets them grow quickly if they need to.
It's like the difference between buying a house and renting an apartment. Renting gives you flexibility, right?
Perfect analogy. And big data goes hand in hand with cloud computing. There's so much data being created in the financial world. Transactions, market trends, you name it. Fintech companies are using big data to make better decisions, manage risk, and develop new products.
So it's about more than just having the data. It's about being able to actually use it in a smart way.
Exactly. It's like having a library. Not that useful unless you know which books to read. Big data analytics is about understanding the data and using it strategically.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to switch gears for a second and talk about the human impact of all of this. We've talked about the challenges for traditional banks in this new landscape. Are there any good news stories? Are there examples of banks that are adapting and even thriving?
Absolutely. It's easy to see fintech as a threat, but in reality, there's a lot of collaboration happening. Fintech is pushing traditional banks to step up their game, and many of them are doing just that.
That's great to hear. So how are they adapting? What's their secret?
One big one is partnerships. Banks team up with fintech companies. The banks have the customers and the regulatory know-how, and the fintech companies have the agility and the new technology.
Like a match made in heaven, but for finance.
Exactly. We're also seeing banks investing heavily in their own tech. Think online banking, mobile apps, a better user experience.
They're realizing that convenience is key. Any other strategies?
Some banks are even launching their own fintech incubators or venture capital funds. They're investing in startups, fostering innovation from within.
Wow, so they're not just playing defense, they're going on offense. It's like that saying, if you can't beat them, join them. Or in this case, fund them.
That's a great way to put it, and that's what's going to drive the most positive change. Collaboration and a willingness to evolve.
I completely agree. So we've covered the current state of fintech, the technology, the evolving relationship between fintech and traditional banking. What about the future? Any predictions?
Predicting the future. If I could do that, I'd be on a beach somewhere.
Me too. But seriously, are there any clues from what you've been reading about where this is all heading?
Well, no one knows for sure, but there are some interesting trends emerging. One that keeps coming up is decentralized finance, or DeFi.
DeFi sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. What is it, and why are people excited about it?
Imagine a financial system that isn't controlled by the big institutions. That's the idea behind DeFi. It uses blockchain technology to cut out the middleman, giving people more control over their own money.
So it's about giving power back to the people.
That's the general idea. With DeFi, you could potentially borrow money from someone on the other side of the world without going through a bank, or invest in things without needing a brokerage account. It's about making finance more open and accessible to everyone.
Sounds incredibly empowering, but also maybe a little bit risky.
That's a fair point. DeFi is still new. It's mostly unregulated, which means it can be vulnerable to scams.
So potentially revolutionary, but potentially risky. What other trends are on the horizon?
Well, we talked about embedded finance earlier. That's only going to get bigger in the next few years.
Right. It's about making financial services easier and more integrated into our everyday lives.
Exactly. We're already seeing it with ride-sharing apps that let you pay within the app or online stores that offer financing options. But that's just the beginning. Imagine ordering a coffee machine online and getting instantly approved for a loan, all without leaving the retailer's website.
Now that's convenience. It's like finance just fades into the background.
Exactly. And this is only going to accelerate as more and more businesses find ways to embed financial services into what they offer.
So it's about meeting customers where they are, whether it's their favorite shopping app or social media platform.
Exactly. And this is going to blur the lines between traditional finance and other industries even more.
It sounds like the future of finance is all about breaking down barriers and making things more seamless for everyone.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today. AI, blockchain, neobanks. The world of fintech is burning.
It really is an exciting time. And we're just getting started. There's so much more to come.
I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about for now. Okay, so we'll save those predictions for another time. But before we wrap up, you said something earlier about how fintech isn't just about the tech, right? It's also about making finance more inclusive.
Right. And that's what's so exciting about it. For a long time, it's been like this exclusive club, you know? A lot of people get left out, especially in underserved communities.
Like that whole "it takes money to make money" thing. But what if you don't even have access to a bank account or loans?
Exactly. It creates this cycle that's hard to break. But fintech can change that. It can bring financial services to people who've been shut out, give them a real shot.
Okay, that's really cool. How does that actually work? What's a real-world example?
Take microfinance, for example. There are platforms that give small loans to people in developing countries, loans that traditional banks wouldn't even consider. And these microloans can be huge. Start a business, invest in education, support their families. It's life-changing.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like giving someone a hand up, not a handout. What else is being done to promote financial inclusion?
Financial literacy is a big one. We can use tech for that too. I mean, everyone's on their phones these days, right? So there are apps and platforms out there that make learning about personal finance, budgeting, even investing actually fun.
It's like sneaking in some education while they're scrolling through social media. I love it. So is fintech the answer to everything?
Well, I wouldn't say that. We still have to deal with the digital divide, making sure everyone has access to the internet and the technology in the first place.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Can't have financial inclusion if some people can't even get online.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to keep talking about this, raising awareness. We need policies that promote digital equity. Everyone deserves to be a part of this.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from the tech itself to the way it's changing things for people all over the world.
It really shows you the power of technology, right? Not just to change how we use money, but to make the world a more inclusive place.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of fintech. We hope you learned something new, and who knows, maybe it even sparks some ideas. This is just the beginning. There's a whole lot more to explore out there.